Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well. In this video, I want to talk about aggression and how if you have a controlled aggression, that this makes you a better person in society. Specifically, I'm going to be referring to men, but I think this applies to women as well. But I want to articulate this from the perspective of being a police officer and arresting people who do not have control over their aggression and their emotions, let's say, and the people who do. And I actually teach this because I'm a football coach for fun. I volunteer coach in American football wherever I've lived in the world. And I can tell you that when the players develop a strong aggression or ability to inflict violence, but under control, I perceive them to be more mature and more capable adults moving forward. So for context in the coaching thing, I often coach high school kids, between 14 to 18, let's say, the age category. And it's the kids who've been playing for a long time. They've already got the skill set of aggression built in, but often, at least in Canada, where I have predominantly lived, the kids come with no background in that sport, and sometimes like aggression has been sort of burnt out of them. They don't have that innate sort of drive to want to be in contact, to wrestle, to be aggressive, to dominate, let's say, even though that's the best strategy in the game, because football is very psychological. If someone knocks you down and maybe they say something mean to you at the end of it, like, stay down kind of thing, you have to be willing to compete and use your own aggression to override that fear response to get back in the game and create that psychological domination on the other player. So often football games, because you get 45-second breaks in between each play, or a period of time between each play, you get a lot of time to think. So I know the score of a game usually without looking at the scoreboard by just looking at the players on the other team. If the other team's body language is all like this, then I know we're winning. But if they're all kind of standing up, chest out, I know that we're probably losing, or it's a close game at least. So it's very psychological, that game. Of course, all games are. Life is psychological, of course. But I do find that sport specifically creates an environment where, you don't just keep playing. You get knocked over, you have a bad situation, you have to reframe and readjust in the moment, and you get 45 seconds to overthink things if you're not well trained in this concept. So we always get this cohort of kids who are new and they're fearful. So whatever's happened in the society in their life so far, they haven't been taught the pros and cons of being able to control and apply their aggression and their competitiveness to the physical realm. And, the first few practices, you can see who they are, right? The body language is like this. They're kind of fearful. They kind of tiptoe around. They're not holding the space, they're just kind of like passively there. And it's very interesting because as a coach and a man, I suppose, it's interesting to watch these little boys essentially like get into their first contract dealt. We coach them up. It's all safe. Like, we do like, proper tackling technique, proper, like they know the rules. It's not just throwing people into the pit, but when we have our first instance of, tackling or aggression, usually those kids get run over like repeatedly. And you can just tell them, they're like, this is not fun per se. But eventually, after 2 or 3 reps, they have one or two good scenarios occur, or maybe we do it for all that, like kind of lets them be aggressive without repercussion. Like they're not really competing against someone who's trying the hardest, a tackle drill where they're hitting the person, not being hit, etc., as part of the drill. And then all of a sudden, I see it every time. I've coached for like almost 2 decades now. The kids have that first initial contact, and then they stand up and they have the biggest smile, and it's just like the most natural thing in the world. And I don't really have to coach that. I just have to show them the first few reps, and then all of a sudden they embody that super aggressive mentality, but it's kind of uncontrolled. But you can see it just feels as natural as breathing the air. And when that happens, you see the body language change. They're standing up a little bit more square. They're holding the space. And you can just feel that really aggressive energy kind of emanating out of them. And then I feel like it's my role as a sort of mentor to these kids or a coach is to refine that and then sort of adjust it to make it make sense for the context of the game and for the context of life. So, for example, in one of my last seasons recently, I had a player who was very aggressive, but not just in the football context, also in his life, allegedly. So when he came onto the field, he was out of control. So, if someone tackled him, or if he was tackled, or some sort of cheap thing occurred, he would lose his mind, he'd throw his helmet, he'd push the other team, he'd try to get into a fight, which is not advantageous for us to win. It's not advantageous behavior in any context. So he was my sort of case study for the for the year, like my science project, I suppose. And I worked with him and said, hey, like when you have that high emotion, like what's the best response? Like, let's pregame it in advance. If someone pokes you in the eye, what are you going to do? Are you going to get a flag and put our team in a bad position? Or are you going to be able to manage yourself? And interestingly, for the first 2 or 3 games, he had a couple outbursts, a few big penalties. He kind of not cost us the game, but cost us, points, let's say, or a position at least, and was not advantageous. But over the season, by the end of the season, he was getting no penalties. He had control. He could still get mad. You can't control the emotions when they pop up, but you can see he'd have a bad play. He'd be angry, and I'd look at him and we'd clear the slate mechanism. So I'd say, hey, clear the slate, next play. Turn the anger into useful aggression towards a vision, towards a goal. And you could see his brain going, yeah, okay, so I'm angry. I'm not just going to throw hands. I'm not just going to punch someone. I'm going to turn that into a good play in the next play. And so that was where my, one of my most meaningful and proudest moments from that season was taking that person from a out of control aggression to a controlled aggression, because I know that will extrapolate down the line, right? So when he's at work, someone says the boss says something mean, he's not going to punch the boss. He's going to have that negative emotion and then pivot it towards something useful, which is, I think for guys specifically, but girls too, that's a very useful skill set to have. And then on the other side, where the kids are a bit soft, in this most recent season, I had a kid who was very timid with the physical element of it. And you just see it. He was so soft. I'm a nice person, but I felt like I wanted to bully them. You know what I mean? He's just such a soft person, which is okay. But in the football context, that's not useful. And I said something to him along the line. We had a conversation, and I said, hey, listen, man, when you're walking down the street, do you want people to perceive you as soft, or do you want to be perceived as like a dude who can handle himself? And that really cued with him, because I think he was probably extrapolating that to his maybe life outside of the sport, which is a safe environment to be in, because the coaches are good, the players are nice, but maybe in his life in school, or maybe some bullying for sure that might have been occurring. And he was just like, yeah, I want that. So we would practice, after the practice for 5-10 minutes, just to work on the physicality. If I push you, you can push back, that sort of reciprocity in the wrestling kind of, context of the sport. And then, I'd get him in the tackling drills, and I'd put him in scenarios where he could thrive, essentially. He's a big kid, so big kid versus a little kid kind of scenario. And then eventually, by the end of the season, he was throwing his weight around. And his mom, in our second last game, came up to me at the end of the game and said, to the coaches, not just me, but, take whatever you guys have done with this, my son, it's great. He walks around the house like a man. And it was almost a direct quote. And I thought, oh, that's super interesting. So the skill set of controlled aggression, even from a low baseline coming up, is translated in the real life by the way the person carries themselves. And I think this is a key skill set that I don't think guys get in a lot of realms, but the contact sports, the fighting sports, etc. Obviously, that's part of the sport, and so you learn this key skill. And then just to extrapolate further on the line, one of the reasons I'm really intense about that is as a big give back to the community. Let's say when I'm coaching, that's one of my biggest things I want to give the students is that, or the players rather, is that in real life, when I was a police officer on the front line in really high crime indexes, the people I was arresting were mostly men, especially when it comes to violent assaults, not women so much, although women could be violent as well. But the people who I was arresting had no control over their aggression. So classic domestic scenario is I have an argument with my wife, and then I have a negative feeling for whatever reason, and then they just use physical force to express that emotion, and then the police come and we arrest that person. Maybe we fight that person too, because it's just a big mess, and they don't have control over that emotional subset. But I think that if I had those kids, or that those men, I guess, the offenders, if I had them as a football coach for 3 or 4 months, I don't think they would be doing that. And the reason I think that, again, it's anecdotal, is that I almost, in over a decade of policing, I never arrested a guy from a UFC gym in Houston. I never arrested a martial artist, a person who did karate on a 7-day-a-week schedule who was competitive. I never arrested football players even. And of course, there's each person is their own unit of analysis. But in a general sense, the people I was arresting were people who had no emotional control because they never practiced that skill set as a guy. The aggression is sitting there. It's biological. It's physiological. You could feel it. There's intensity behind the eyes, but there's no way to express it. So then when they pop off, it's their first rep with extreme aggression, and there's no structure of of men or brotherhood to kind of corral that and say that's good aggression and that's bad aggression in regards to like the outcomes that are occurring, right? The physical manifestation of it. So this is why I think it's super important that, you know, if you have kids or if you're with young men, to really make sure that they have a strong understanding. Like the weak man is the weak psychological male is the dangerous one. Like I rarely arrested or engaged with men who were like really moving along in their life in a really big way and who were had a background in physical sports. Like you just don't, it just doesn't happen. The people I'm arresting are the opposite of that, which is interesting because you think that, you know, the most aggressive people play like the most aggressive sports, but that doesn't necessarily seem to translate anecdotally to the law enforcement realm. The people who are beating up their spouses are not necessarily the football players or the rugby players or the martial artists, etc., because the sport demands, unless you're in a weird program and you've had some bad luck with who your coaches are, it demands control of that aggression. The aggression is there in everyone innately, right? Especially with males. But if you create a structure where, you know, there's aggression leveraged well versus aggression leveraged poorly, then the outcomes in the real life as it extrapolates will be much different. And then a really good example of this, and I'll finish with this, is I used to live in the far north of Canada, in a really small town. It's like where the road ended. Like there was like literally no roads north. You have to fly somewhere to get more north in this small town. And there was 2 high schools, and one of the high schools had I was the coach at that one particular high school. It was a small group, and the community had like one of the highest crime indexes in all of Canada. I think it was like 110 times the norm for violent crime in this particular community. And I was coaching kids who, you know, came from very difficult backgrounds, very difficult contexts, family members who were maybe involved in crime, et cetera, et cetera. And we had a really good coaching staff. It was 2 police officers, a couple of teachers who were kind of switched on with this. And football was like an outlet for a lot of negative emotion. So I would say, hey man, like if you're mad, if you're angry, like let's leverage this into something positive, like, you know, like catching the ball, running the pass, you know, whatever. Let's translate that into the football realm. And it was really productive 2 years of my life. And we sent 2 kids to go play university football. It's fantastic. But the one thing I would say is that in that small cohort, maybe like 2,000 people in the town, about 5,000 total, 5,000 people in the immediate area. You know, we had 30 kids on the team. None of them had any interaction with the law enforcement community because we had given them an outlet to express aggressive feelings, negative emotions, etc., and then control that and turn it into something useful. Now, again, it's anecdotal. This is just my personal opinion, but I mean, I was in almost everybody's house as a police officer in that community, and I was arresting those kids' friends. You know, like there's only a couple social groups to be in, so if you're a grade 12 kid, you know, there might be like 50 to 60 kids total. So when they had like, you know, a bush party or a little social event, whatever, if I had to get called for that for whatever reason, which was common, unfortunately, I wasn't seeing those names in the prisoner list in the morning, you know what I'm saying? And so again, I think that there's, if you have that strong male leadership, you can incorporate aggression into a skill set that you apply. You feel that negative emotion and you translate it into positive works in your life. And I think that translates to lack of criminality for sure, but also just a general sense of like you have control over your life's gonna have better outcomes. So that's it. I don't know, maybe that's a bit controversial, but I feel pretty strongly about that because every year I repeatedly see kids who don't have that under control. And then by the end of the season, after 3 months of 5 days a week kind of training, they do have that under control. And I see that with just looking at them walk down the path, I see that they hold themselves, and I'm pretty proud of those outcomes. And I get good feedback from the parents too. So I don't know if that makes sense. Hopefully that's relevant. I just wanted to kind of riff on this because I was just thinking about it today. So that's it. Hope you have a great day, and I'll catch you in the next video.